very much, Mr. Robinson, and it's a pleasure to speak in this important debate because diabetes is such a significant issue in the UK with 4.6 million people having it. On current projections, we're on track to have over 5 million people suffering with diabetes by 2025. Now, we know that 90% of people have type 2 diabetes, and we also know that being overweight or obese accounts for as much as 80 to 85% of someone's risk of developing this condition. So I'm going to focus my remarks on what is causing this hugely unwelcome surge in diabetes across the UK, and more importantly, what we need to do about it. Because the shocking facts are that a quarter of our children start primary school in reception being overweight or obese. By the time they leave, 1/3 are overweight or obese. So they're being educated, but they're becoming overall less healthier with very worrying implications for their future life chances. In the UK at the moment, 30% of all our children are overweight or obese, and with adults, it's 60%. So the worry there is that it's almost become normalised when 60% of adults are overweight or obese, and people don't notice it and don't think it's a problem. And to me, this is a huge social justice issue because we know that rates of obesity are twice as high in our most deprived communities as they are in our least deprived communities, a point that my right honourable friend made very eloquently in his opening remarks. Now, I was particularly impressed by the remarks of our wonderful Chief Medical Officer, Dame Sally Davies, just before Christmas. And she hit hard at a number of targets and came out with a number of very important truths. And she had the food industry, in particular, in her sights. And she said that, frankly, they are benefiting from selling unhealthy food and not paying for the harm that they do, and was very clear that the food industry has not done enough. One of the issues she raised was the fact that there is added sugar in baby milk and baby foods, for goodness sake. Now, what is the justification for that, other than to, put babies and very young children towards a life of addiction towards sugar? That is scandalous, and we should call it out, and frankly the government should ban it as soon as it's able to. If we have to leave the European Union to do that, well then, it should be an early priority at the start of April. Now, I didn't come into public life just to ban things, and of course the corollary of that is that we need to make the healthy choice the easy choice, and we need to be all about promoting a wonderful, healthy, delicious, nutritious, often British food. Again, a point my right honourable friend made very well. And Dame Sally Davies spoke about the need perhaps for price subsidies on fruit and vegetables. Let's make fruit and vegetables good food that is not going to cause obesity and diabetes, more accessible, more available, and more affordable for our constituents. And you could do that through the taxation system. She also called for sugary milk drinks to come into the soft drinks industry levy, which I think is entirely sensible as well. And it's worth just looking at some of the foods currently on our supermarket shelves. If we look at children's breakfast cereals, for example, Kellogg's Frosties, currently 37 grams out of every 100 grams of Kellogg's Frosties are sugar. Kellogg's Crunchy Nut cornflakes, 35.3 grams per 100 grams. Kellogg's Cocoa Pops, they've come down a little bit, but still 30.9 grams of sugar per 100 grams. Those are pretty appalling figures if you think how much sugar. Some of the own brands in 2017 were not much better. Little Golden Balls, 36 grams of sugar per 100 grams. Aldi Sugar Frosted Flakes, 35 grams per 100 grams. Tesco Frosted Flakes, 34.9 grams. Now, those are Public Health England figures. They relate, some of them to August 2017. Some of them are still current, the Kellogg's ones, for example. We need to call this out. And frankly, they are not making enough progress. And unless there is healthier food available for our constituents, we are not going to turn this supertanker down. We know also from Public Health England that actually it's chocolate confectionery and biscuits that between the two of them account for over 300,000 tonnes of sugar going into our diet every year, more than, in fact, all the other food categories all together. So my first plea, really, is that we do more with the food manufacturers. They need to get with the programme. They need to know they are in the sights of many of us in this House. I'm a Conservative. I believe in the free market. I don't want the state to produce our food. But there is a very serious challenge here because we are all paying for the NHS through our taxes. And frankly, the food industry is causing a large part of the problem. And it's not fair to blame our local GPs for this. Dr. Chris Marshall, one of my best GPs locally, was having to defend, the diabetes prevalence in his area and what was happening about it. And, it's not fair to blame GPs when so much is stacked against them in the food industry and elsewhere. So, number one, the food industry, they really need to raise their game. They've been getting away with too much for too long, and the government needs to play hardball with them. Secondly, the whole area of active travel as well. I came to the House of Commons on a bicycle this morning because I was able to do that. But, for our children, when we design new housing estates, let's make sure that they can bicycle or walk to school. Let's get more cycling, more walking in our cities. That's a design and planning issue. We have officials from the Minister from the Department of Health here. We need a cross-government strategy to build in active and healthy travel for children and adults to help with this. Thirdly, calorie information. Now, Public Health England have told us if you're a woman, you should eat up to 2,000 calories a day. If you're a man, 2,500. Does anyone here, Mr. Robinson, know how many calories they had for breakfast, or they will have for lunch, or they will have for supper? What is the point of giving us this daily total if none of us have a clue how much we eat? So just here's a suggestion. Every surgery wall, when you're waiting 10 minutes to get in to see the doctor, why not have up different meals that the British public eat in the main and give a rough idea of how many calories are in them? That would be a start for education, wouldn't it? It would be free, it would be easy, it would be good use of a surgery wall in a public space where we all sit and wait. Why don't we try and get some of this public information out there so we can actually do something about this and know what we are doing? We've talked about schools. I think I absolutely wouldn't blame teachers. They have more than enough to do trying to teach children. But I do think they have a role, a public education role. And when they teach children to cook and so on, I think we do need much more emphasis to, given that children are going from a quarter overweight or obese to a third overweight or obese, to provide proper education to the children in this area. And also, I would say we need to look to our own Parliament, actually, right on our doorstep here. Now, there has been a move, Mr. Robinson, quite rightly, which I'm sure you approve of, to make this a more plastic-free Parliament. I approve of that. That's right. But actually, our catering outlets here, their offerings, their lack of information are not as good. Let's set an example on our own doorstep.